Hello again, everybody. Today is January 18th, and welcome back for another episode of Intuitive Insights. Today, my guest is the awesome Patricia Missakian of the Askashic Records Institute, here to tell us about how she became intuitive and how she got into the business of Askashic Records. Patricia, hi and welcome. What age were you when you realized that you were intuitive?
Okay. All right. So I'll start. Hello, Dr. Yolanda. Thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be here together with you and with your tribe and sharing a little bit about the Askashic Records. So how I learned that I was intuitive, it's actually interesting because I am originally from Brazil, and I don't know if you're familiar of, there are different cultures that, connected to religion, but not. And I happen to be, my father happened to be it's a spiritism. And then, so that is a lot of ceremonies and rituals, comes from Africa. And, so it's a culture that's pretty much my dad's side. So when I was going to my dad's house in the weekend and he would go to these rituals, he would bring me with him. So I got to see, the ceremonies and hear and see the mediums. It's a kind of mediumship. So, and I remember that I was very young. I think I was about 7 years old. And one person, one medium told him, she's going to dress white. And at the time, it didn't click until I started teaching healing and bringing the white light and the golden light. And so it was a very cute, prophecy. But I knew I was intuitive, since I can remember. I always felt people's energy. I felt people's thoughts. And at the time, because I didn't have anyone to teach me about those things, I didn't have any, parameters to understand. I thought actually there was something wrong with me. I was so sensitive, and I just did not know how to work with it, how to deal with it. And today, I realized that gift, it's actually a beautiful, it wasn't a curse, it is an actual big gift to be able to be sensitive. And nowadays there are so many of us that are, helping do our part to help others in awakening and becoming.
Wow, that is a beautiful, beautiful story. And I think a lot of young men and young intuitives have had similar experiences where they did think, oh my gosh, something is really, really wrong. I'm doing things other people aren't doing. And you took this knowledge and this natural gift that you have, and you have managed to parlay it into a business called the Askashic Records Institute, and you offer mentorship and classes for other people. How did that begin for you?
So when I was about on my 20s, I was still living in Brazil, and I felt the need to just go out into the world and find out what I was made of. And so at that time, I just packed my little suitcase, and I made some arrangements, right? Of course, got my ticket, and I knew someone in the United States. But pretty much I had this, I had $600, that's all I had. And I had this bag of dreams, my little bags of dreams, and I moved to Seattle, Washington. What I didn't know, though, is that inside the little bags of dreams was my victim mentality, which I pretty much absorbed from the people around me in Brazil. And one interesting thing for all of us that are sensitive, when you are very sensitive, you absorb other people's ways of being and beliefs as is yours. And that's how I had lived my whole 20s. And when I moved here, that was on my own, and I got a few smashed my nose in a few doors. I started going, bam, got some doors. And So I laugh today, but there was the breakdown point for me. I think it was about 20 years ago. I was driving. At the time, I had moved to Los Angeles. I was driving on the freeway. I was going to my job at the time, and I just had to stop on the side of the freeway. I was having a panic attack. I just could no longer be on that marriage, my first marriage, and a job that I hated. And I was just, living life as a victim. And that was really the breakdown point for me. And I just stopped. I stopped my car. I went to the side of the freeway. The car just whistled by me, and I broke down. And when I look back to that moment, that when I stopped looking for answers outside of me, and I decided to start looking for them inside. And that's when I started going through healing classes. I started going to intuitive classes, and I started understanding my gifts and starting to develop them. And I remember it's very interesting that at the time I was also trying to find another job, and I was just in that search and feeling all that anxiety. And right after that time in the freeway, I had a dream, and it was a group of grandmothers dressing white, and they said, "We are taking care of it." And that dream, it's almost like he anchored that message I got when I was maybe 7 years old with my dad in the center, right? So it's almost like everything that I could not integrate in my life was like downloaded on that dream. And I continue moving forward. The Akashic records show up. I start, I learned one technique, which I no longer use, to connect to the Akashic records. And but I felt home, like between all the techniques I learned, when I connect to the Akashic records, I felt that same healing energy that I felt at 7, and then with the grandmothers in my dream. And I started, implementing, working with the Akashic records. I had a practice for a long time here, and just working with clients one-on-one. And then we went, 2012, I went online, and I created a very unique business where I was creating a brand based on the Akashic Records business. So I would access the Akashic Records of the business and create, I was a designer too, and I would create the brand for my clients through the purpose of that business. It was a very cool business, but I started getting burnt out. And my clients and my colleagues started asking me to start teaching about the Akashic Records. And that's when I did the whole turn. And about 5 years ago, I founded the Akashic Records Institute. And since then, we had over 2,500 students that enrolled in the many different programs that we teach, both in English and Portuguese.
Oh, wow. That is exciting. Oh my gosh. I was just like, where's the story going? I love it. I love it. Wow. So, and for grown adults that even called me and asked, how would you explain the Akashic record to someone who's new and just getting into metaphysics?
That's a great question. So the Akashic records are basically a collection of all your memories. So when you think back, if I ask you, what is your favorite memory? You're going to start to, tuning in and connecting to some memories that you remember from this life. And however, the Akashic records go beyond this life. It goes through your soul's memories, and also through your lineage memories and parallel memories. You start getting all over the place. So, but the most important thing, because, it is very important, but when someone hears the first time, probably the person says, so why should I care? So the reason that the Akashic records are so important, especially now, is that when we are living a life and experiencing different memories, at every single moment, we are creating an agreement with ourselves of others. We are attaching our feelings and our beliefs to that particular memory and in our body. So that is almost like the memory has a connection to a specific area in your body where you connect that belief and that feeling. Let's say, does that make sense? I can explain a little more.
One of the most, I think you can appreciate this, one of the most interesting things I ever learned in community college is when I was taking philosophy. And it boggled my brain that a thought was a thing. And from this conversation, I would glean that that thought is not only a thing, but that thing can be interpreted as an anchor into your body. Is that right?
Yes, yes. And it's almost like you don't anchor the memory, but you anchor the feelings and the agreements that you made and the beliefs that you created through that memory.
Wow.
So, and you accumulated both positive and negative experiences. And where the Akashic records come in, when you work with your Akashic records, you are able to, tune back into that moment that you made that agreement, so you can clear the agreement or the feeling. Never the memory, because we can't just delete our memories, otherwise we're going to lose the wisdom. Yeah. But you can delete the agreements and the emotions that if we don't clear, your ego is going to continue using that to sabotage all your opportunities that you wanted to bring into your life.
And you encourage people to do this on their own, or do they need a professional to help them with this?
Well, I teach classes for people that wanted to do on their own. So there are levels, right? There are things that it's more advisable for you to work with a professional, like, for example, a past life where you made an agreement that is creating this big karma in this life, right? This, I highly recommend have a practitioner do a gift retrieval for you. There are levels, right? It's important. All the practitioners that go through the Akashic Records Institute, they're required to go through the personal level first, because the way I see it, we are not priests that give people's opinion without living a marriage. So the practitioners go through the personal level. So it's very healing to learn how to connect to your own Akashic records. And you're going to, by doing so, you're already peeling some layers, you're already receiving some healing, but there are deeper wounds that is highly recommended to work with practitioner.
Wow. And it's the same for hypnosis. I mean, if you can easily find things for self-hypnosis purposes to help with healing, but then again, there are some things that are so much deeper, you really, really do need a practitioner for to put you into that deep trance state and ask those questions of your subconscious and let them, unconsciously come through. That is absolutely really beautiful. So if someone were to come to you for mentor training, how long is that and what does that entail for your client?
Well, there are two ways that we can work together. We have group classes where one can come. Our first class is, we are actually doing a huge shift in the program. But you start with a retreat, a 2-day online intensive, where you learn how to develop your intuition so you can decode the messages that you're receiving from the records. You learn how to connect to the Akashic records. And we also have a powerful healing session with your inner child. So this is, the group, we have like 4 models, and this is the first model. And then the next models are, working with clients and accessing the records for clients and creating boundaries. So, so the groups work that way. And I also support women that are going through, trying to reach the next level of income, the next level of impact in their business. And then I do private one-on-one mentoring. And the mentoring, it's between 3 months to a year, depending.
Okay, that's awesome. That's a good time frame, just kind of depending upon what they need. Now, tell me about something very, very interesting about the business model. You said doing an Akashic record for the business model?
Yes.
I've never heard of that. That just sounds like wow to me. Tell me about that.
Yes. That's the download that I received, and that's how I created this whole unique business used to be called the branding goddess.
Mm-hmm.
2012, there was this goddess thing going on. So anyway, and that's basically what it was. I would tune into the soul frequency of the business of the Akashic records of my clients. And while I was working on their brand, I would bring their records around me. So, it was a done for you service, right? So there is the component of working with the client, all the healing and the transformation and the mindset that we went through, clearing old beliefs, old attachments to agreements. And then we'd move on to the business. And when we move on to the business, then I would incorporate their business, the essence of their business when I was designing their business. So it was a very unique business. And that is one of the things that I teach my students how, because it's, when you say Akashic records, there are many different ways to access the Akashic records. There is many different intentions in working with the Akashic records. And so it's important to not be one person that does that technique, but you bring all of you, your wisdom and all your gifts into bringing that transformation that happens to be using the tool of the Akashic records. But it's not the Akashic records, it's you that bring your essence to the business and the gifts that you're here to give to the world.
Wow. Is there any information that's off limit with regard to the Akashic records?
I'm so sorry, I could not hear that. What
is there any information that's off limits when it comes to the Akashic records?
Well, when it comes to the Akashic records, you only can access a person Akashic records if you have their permission. So the restriction is you need the person's permission to access the record. So the same goes for a business. Like a person cannot just come and access my Akashic records business because they don't have permission. So you only can access a person's Akashic records business a person's business if the owner of the business gives you permission. So there are that kind of restriction. You cannot access the records of someone that passed away because they're no longer here. And therefore, you wanted to access so you can use the information to your practical life. So you can access the records of a family member that is hurting that departure, right? So, but not the person that departure. You can't access someone that did not give you permission.
Okay, wow, that's beautiful. So when you visualize this place, this momentary experience with the Akashic records, what do you visualize?
So, great question. And I wanted to, put a little but here, because every person is going to visualize the records in a different way. It's going to come to them depending on their clair, that is the most predominant clair. So I am sensitive and visual. So when I tune into a person's or a business records, for me, I receive as movies and images and feelings. So, one thing that I teach my students as we are coming from our third dimension into the dimension of the records, the fifth dimension, that is we pass through the fourth dimension. And every time I'm going to a client records, that piece in the beginning of the session is so important because it tells me exactly what's going on in their life. Like I can, but it comes in forms of images and visuals. So that's why I'm saying but because that's how I see it. And I teach my students to develop the way that they receive information so they can receive in the way that they can decode. So some students will tune into the records through hearing. They don't see anything, they don't feel anything, they hear all the information. Other students have the knowing, they would know the information. And those are the ones that would resist the training, like that they are getting the information because it just comes and they're like, I'm making it up. And I'm like, you're not. But then as they continue and they stick with it, their sessions are very, very powerful.
Wow, that sounds really awesome. And I'm such a certificate junkie anyway. I think I'll sign up. Wow. So one of the things you said, you touched on the fourth dimension. And for people that don't understand what that means, do you have a simple earthly explanation of those of us that are in 3D? How would you explain the fourth dimension?
Yes, well, the third, let's go, starting with the third dimension. Third dimension, everything is solid, it's matter, right? Like that is, things, you touch things are solid, you have lots of thoughts, and, your thoughts, you go back and forth, right? The fifth, I'll go for the fourth, but first let's go to the fifth. The fifth dimension, it's a higher level. It's a knowing. It's there is no density. So it's a higher vibration, energetic vibration. Things come to you in a different way that you used to receive it in your, in the way that you've been using your five senses, right? So the fourth, it's a in between. So in the fourth dimension, most people that are psychics, most people, different cultures, shamanism, that's the dimension that it's the dimension that they tap in, they tune in. So it still has the good and evil energy, like the polarity, still have the polarity energy. And the fifth dimension is just like the polarity dissolves, and that is just love and knowing.
Wow. So I think I would only add to that in simplicity that going from third to fifth is through your feeling centers. That's the fourth dimension. And understanding that your feelings manifest in different ways, but it's that feeling and that intention that gets you to the next dimension. Is that right?
Yes, like in the fourth dimension, that is fear. That is those different levels of emotions, right?
Yes.
And fear. So you still have the biggest polarity, absolutely. And then into the fifth dimension, that is lifted and the vibration is higher. Yeah.
Do you currently associate with a soul planet of yourself?
I don't associate with soul planet. No.
Okay, that's okay. You're firmly here on Earth. That's cool too. What else? Do you have anything else to say for our viewers out there who are just coming into their intuition?
Yeah. Well, the most important thing in coming to the intuition is to slow down and setting the intention to start like slowing down everything in your life, because we are so used to be on the automatic that we don't slow down. So the first thing that, our very first class in developing intuition is notice what is beyond what you're seeing. So if someone is in exercise this in all areas of your life, if you're going to look at a tree, like you look deeper for the different nuances of colors for the tree. If someone is talking to you, look inside their eyes and tune into what else is behind what they're saying. It's almost like slow down. And intuition is like a muscle. The more you use it, the more you're going to develop. And in the beginning, the path to developing intuition is opening up to your imagination, not like closing down the imagination, but the imagination is how your intuition communicates with you in the beginning. So it's kind of like give yourself permission to, really tune into the imagination, let the imagination guide you.
That's awesome. I'm a firm believer in that. When I do sessions with people, that's one of the first things I guide them to do is to let their imagination just let go, because it is indeed a bridge to higher dimensions of thought. And it's just like children. Use it like you did when you were a child, when you were pretending what you were going to be when you grow up, See your spiritual self doing new things and having new adventures. Wow, that is epic. Absolutely epic. Patricia, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me and provide some commentary for the viewers out there. Do you have any last words?
You're so welcome. A pleasure. Yeah, I have a little gift. If you want, I can give it to you, and you can give it to your tribe.
Oh,
It's
yes, they would love that. Yes.
it's called Whispers of Your Soul, and it's a five healing sessions, one a day, and each healing session starts in opening up the intuition. So I believe it will be perfect for a conversation today.
Oh, I would love that. Oh, that's awesome. And how would people access that?
Well, I give it to you, and then you can put it below the video or something like that.
Okay, that's awesome. So it's going to be a link.
The link by head. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that's awesome. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of Intuitive Insights. Bye, guys.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.